Mask transitions are an awesome way to take a normal shot that pans across an object and turn it into a really cool transition. All you really have to do is animate a mask to follow the hard edge of whatever you're panning across. But before we get into the details of just how to do this, let's talk about some of my favorite reasons to use this technique. For me, it brings the camera to life. And what I mean by this is if you use the same motion from one shot to the next and you apply this mask transition, it's going to make it look like there is no cut at all. Rather than a transition, it makes it look like it's the camera that's doing the work. So what happens if you don't match the camera movement? Well, you still get a cool effect, but it's more of this kind of wipe look across the screen. And here we use someone walking across the screen for the technique, and while it does look cool, it just looks a little flat to me. So in my opinion, I like to use this kind of technique with the same camera movement to make it look like the camera is coming to life through the shot. Now, one of my favorite ways to use this technique is to get someone to actually walk across both shots in just the same way. And when you put them together with the mask technique, you get a pretty seamless shot that tricks the eye, and all of a sudden we're in a new location. This could be a really awesome way to introduce new characters in an opening sequence to a film or a music video, and it makes it look like it's being shot with one continuous shot, which is a pretty cool technique, and it kind of leads me into the next reason to use this technique, and that is for editing techniques. And what I mean by this is, so let's say you wanted to shoot a long sequence as a single clip, much like in the movie Birdman that looks like it was shot with one take. Well, you can use this technique to break it up. Let's say my character right here just delivered an awesome monologue, and we want it to be one shot as he goes to answer the door after the doorbell rings, and then he goes down. Delivered a great monologue that we want to use though, so what do? Well, we'll take that shot and we'll use the pillar that moves across the shot, and we'll mask that out. Now we'll take this shot of him just walking across, he doesn't trip, and next thing you know, if we combine the two of those, it looks like one fluid shot. This is a great editing technique if you ever need to use it. Another one is, let's say you have a location that you really need to change. So for whatever reason, you're doing a shot that goes from inside the building to out, and the outside of the location just doesn't look good. If you can match the camera movement in just the same way, you can change locations. So now that you've seen my favorite ways to use mask transitions, let me show you just how to do it in Premiere Pro. Now for all my $5 patron supporters, you're going to find a sequence in the project files called examples that's going to have a few different examples of mask transitions, and you're going to have all the clips too, so go ahead and follow along. Now when you're using a hard edge like the edge of a wall for your mask transition, it's a pretty simple mask that you can create. You only really need to be animating 2 points across for each frame. But what if you want to be using a more complex mask shape, like masking out as somebody walks by? It's a little bit more difficult, so for the sake of the tutorial, we're going to use this as an example. Now on your clip, go ahead and right click and go to New Sequence from Clip. From here, you can just kind of tidy up the clip to the in and out points that you want. You can hit O as your out point and then apostrophe to cut that out. And you only need this clip up until the point where the person walks completely past and out of frame. You don't really need the audio, so we can get rid of that. And we can drag this up a layer because we're going to be laying the second clip underneath it later on. Alright, so now what we want to do is we want to find the point where the body starts to walk through the frame. And once we have that little opening along his back, that's where we can take our blade tool, hit C, and then we can cut the clip. Now select that clip and we'll go up to Effect Controls, and this is where we'll create the mask. We'll be using the pen tool. You're going to want to click to create the points, and don't worry if you go into the body a little bit. We're going to be feathering this out quite a bit to simulate motion blur, so don't worry if you're clicking into him, it doesn't have to be perfect. Now go ahead and click, and if you click and pull out, you're actually going to get these handles, which allows you to draw kind of curvy shapes. Practice that a little bit, and we'll zoom in to kind of get a little bit of a better idea of the shape we want to create, and just click around until you have your shape. And make sure you zoom out enough so that you can actually click outside of the shot. That's going to be really helpful in creating your shape. So as you can see here, if we click out, that is the shape we have. We don't want it to be masking in the layer, we want it to be masking out, so go ahead and click on inverted, and you're going to see that right there. It's too hard of an edge though, when we really do want to simulate motion blur, so let's up the feather. We can up it to something like 50. And I think that motion blur looks pretty good, and you can even notice that we can do some tweaks now. If you want to click back into mask path, and then we can kind of go into the shape a little bit, just so that we can accommodate the feather a little bit better. Go ahead and click out, and you're going to see that looks pretty good. Now we're going to want to go in and we're going to want to click the stopwatch for mask path. This is going to allow us to animate the mask path across the different frames as he's walking across the shot. And now with the clip selected, we're going to move ahead one frame by hitting the right arrow. If you don't see your mask path, go ahead and click on mask feather, then back into mask path. That should probably work. And all we're going to do is we're going to drag our point so that it now accommodates the new shape that we have. If you click on a point and you're just clicking on the mask handles, go ahead and click away from the path. That should get rid of the handles so that you can just drag the keyframe point. And if you need to add a new point, you can do that just by clicking anywhere along the path, and then you've got a new point that you can use from here on out. It doesn't have to be perfect because we have the mask feather, but just make sure as you're moving the points that it gets into the character enough so that you're not showing too much of the background. Go ahead and make any adjustments, and you can click out to take a look to see what it looks like. If that looks good, you're just going to be repeating this process through the next few frames until he is out of the shot. Alright, we have our mask transition, but now we need to add in the second shot where he's walking by the camera in just the same way, but it's out in the hallway, a different location. So let's bring that in, and all we have to do now is match this up so it looks like it's in the same place. So what I'm going to use is the edge of his arm, see if we can match those two areas up. So we're just going to drag this bottom layer over a few frames until it looks about right. Move it over just a little bit more, and you know, that looks pretty good. We'll take a little look. And that looks like a pretty seamless little movement through. One thing we can do is if we want to even scale it up a little bit so that it looks like it has a similar kind of scale to the arm, we can do that. We can also color it to have a similar temperature if we want it to really be seamless to the eye. It's really up to you at this point because the mask transition is done, and from here it's just a matter of styling each clip. Alright guys, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Real quick, I just want to say a huge thank you to Suleiman Faye for being my latest Patreon supporter. I definitely can't do it without you guys. If you like the videos, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Alright, peace.